with that, I'm going to give you Sam Lansing.
Alrighty. Can everybody hear me all right? Excellent. All right, so I want to say welcome and thank you guys, obviously, for joining us here at the conference this year. It's great to see some of my return members and some new faces too. I met a lot of you last night and had some talks. So I'm actually, since I talked to a lot of you last night, I kind of restructured my entire presentation. I was originally just kind of going to go through, the slideshow and do the standard presentation. But after hearing some questions and kind of getting to know some people who are just starting out with Nagios and Nagios XI, I kind of figured, you guys just stop me at any point during the presentation and ask me questions. That's what I'm here for. So if you have anything, on the tip of your tongue and you don't want to forget it, just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you and you can ask me a question. Sound good? All right. So, like he was saying, my name is Sam Lansing. I've been a tech team member with Nagios Enterprises for about 1.5 years now. I started shortly before our last conference last year, and I got a presentation in then as well. So basically, what I do with Nagios Enterprises is I help all of you. I help the end users via the support forums, via our ticketing system, remote sessions, phone calls, all of that. I'm one of the members that helps you with that. In addition to that, I do work on documentation with Nagios, and I do a little bit of programming, a little bit of coding. I've made a few plugins, and I've documented integration with Selenium and Autowit for automation purposes. So, like I was just saying, feel free to ask questions. So we're going to start out here, and we're going to kind of go over how Nagios started. Originally, there was a program called NetSaint, and that's kind of what kicked off the whole Nagios and the Nagios project after that. So Nagios Enterprises kind of sprung to life with Nagios Core. That's what we had at that time. Over the past 2 to 3 years or so that Nagios Enterprises has been around, we've added 4 additional programs to the family, and those are Nagios, in addition to Nagios Core, it's Nagios XI, which is our main commercial monitoring product. Nagios Fusion, which is sort of a centralized, you can view all of your Nagios Core and XI servers from top level, and you can drill down into them to make specific changes, which I'll show some examples of that later on here. Nagios Incident Manager, which is our primary ticketing system. We use just the term incidents instead of ticketing, but a lot of people, as Ethan said in his keynote yesterday, or excuse me, this morning, a lot of people wanted an easy way and a fast way to integrate ticketing with Nagios XI. A lot of monitoring solutions out there have their own ticketing solutions, and that's a specific reason why, is because you really have to have something from that specific company that's easy to integrate. Otherwise, it's really hard to push it to other products for that solution. So it's quite lightweight. I'll be giving a talk tomorrow also on getting started with Incident Manager and Nagios Network Analyzer, or NNA, which is our NetFlow analytics program that we just developed and released about a week and a half ago. So I'll be going over that as well tomorrow. So we're just going to kind of give a little overview here too of what we're talking about right now. We're going to be going over Nagios Core, Nagios XI, and Nagios Fusion. I want to start by saying it's really impossible to cover everything in an hour period. I co-host with Seamus our weekly webinar that we have with Nagios. It's every Thursday at 2 p.m. Central in the United States. And I really encourage you guys to come check that out as well. You can go to nagios.com and sign up from there. It's live. We host a WebEx session, and then we hold kind of a Q&A at the end. So we try to get over as much of the interface as possible during that time, and I'll be sort of giving a video presentation here for Nagios XI, which is going to do the same sort of thing. And then Seamus also had a talk earlier today called Power Up, which is kind of another getting started with Nagios and Nagios XI talk. If you guys missed that, I'd recommend taking a look at the slides when we put them up here after the conference, and the video that's recorded too, because there's undoubtedly going to be stuff that he covered that I didn't, and vice versa. And we're really going to focus on Nagios XI during this talk. The primary reason for that is everything you can do with Core, you can do inside of XI, plus more, of course. XI has many more features than Core does itself. And anything you can do there, you'll be able to replicate it in XI for sure. So we're going to go over Core, and some of the major differences, and I'm going to show you the interface, give some quick explanations of some basic checking with Nagios and stuff like that can help you get off the ground and kind of understand what you're getting into when you start monitoring your systems in your environment. So Nagios Core. I'm just going to go over a few of the requirements here, just some basic low-level stuff, or high-level stuff rather. You can install Nagios Core via some certain packages. I know, for instance, Ubuntu has a package. It's called Nagios 3, which is something you can download from their package manager and install. There's also source-based installation methods, which I personally use myself because that gives you a little more control than just installing straight off of a package. So they're available for Nagios, or for CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and several Debian derivatives. There's also a few other kind of off-the-wall distros out there that you can install Nagios on as well. We also have preloaded VMs, which would be our student and professional edition VMs. There is a charge to those. Of course, Nagios Core is free and open source, but there's a charge for our VMs because we pre-configure them for you. We add in certain, I want to say, add-ons to them, or sort of components that really make it easier for you to set up all of your systems, keep everything managed. We add PNP by default and have that configured, and that's the primary graphing component for Nagios Core. And then you can install Nagios Core on really any system. The system requirements for Nagios Core and Nagios XI are roughly the same. It's a standard 2 to 4 core system, 8 gigs of modern memory. You could do it with some classic memory out there, but definitely want to make sure you've got good, solid, clean modern memory. And then around 20 gigabytes of hard drive space. The majority of the hard drive space gets taken up with, as far as Nagios Core goes, mostly logging information. Depending on how you're graphing with Nagios, there's going to be either graphs generated based off of logs, or also RRD files, which is a round-robin database style file, and those will fill up as well, and that's where you're going to get the most space taken up. Since Nagios Core runs off of flat configuration files, that anything core base itself is very minute compared to the other things that I mentioned there that will take up space. So Nagios Core is the monitoring and alerting engine, really, that's the primary application where all of our other Nagios products are based off of, especially Nagios XI. So everything kind of comes back and ties in with Core. Core runs in the back end of Nagios XI, so what you can expect from XI is what you'll see with Nagios Core as well, as far as how it processes checks, how everything is read into the system itself, how alerting is done, things like that. Nagios Core is a basic event scheduler. It's a processor and alert manager also for those objects that you're monitoring. And by objects, I mean hosts, services, items like that, which I'll kind of give a brief overview of hosts and services as well, since some people may not be familiar with those terms as far as monitoring goes. There are also several backend APIs with Nagios Core and Nagios XI. They really allow you to pull out status information from your hosts and services. You can pull out really some granular details straight from the system itself, and you could ship those into something you've created for yourself. If you have several members on your monitoring team and their workstations are all set up, you can push notifications and alerts to RSS feeds for your entire company. You can build dashboards or web portals and push all that Nagios information in there, so they can view it and choose to see only what they are required to see for monitoring. So as I was saying, really the primary scope for Nagios Core itself is the processing, event handling, and alerting. Now, as I was saying, also basic configurations are implemented based off of flat configuration files, and I'm going to be showing some examples here as well. Excuse me. They're read into Nagios upon its start. So, as I said, I'll be showing these configuration file examples. The way you have to create your hosts and services in Nagios Core is manually. You have to do it by hand on the command line. There are add-ons available out there that assist in that, but it's still somewhat of a monotonous task compared to Nagios XI. And I just want to preface this also. I'm going to be giving some short tips thrown out there. Make sure that you verify your configuration files with Nagios Core before you try to restart Nagios itself to actually populate them in the system where you can see them. I've ran into a lot of systems out there that I've helped people on where they haven't verified their configuration files, and they push a ton of changes in at once, and that basically stops Nagios itself from restarting, because when Nagios detects there's problems with the configurations, it will not start. And that's a no-no, of course, if you actually want to use it. So I'll be also pointing out in here there's a documentation site for Nagios itself that I go to quite often when supporting, because there's little things that I forget, any of us forget. And verifying configurations is also listed in there and how to do that. All right. And then another thing, Nagios Core is obviously it's an open source project, community fed project, and we also have several developers on our team specifically that work with Nagios Core. So we have consistent updates. It's got a very long and rich development cycle. So you can always expect there to be updates and bug fixes going on with that. So Nagios Core, Nagios XI, any of the Nagios products use web front ends. And those web front ends are what you're seeing when you're on the front end is web pages served by Apache, so primarily PHP that's being fed in. You're also seeing your checks that you're running against your devices, and the results are for those checks are either fed to you actively or passively. So Nagios and Nagios XI have two primary ways of running checks out to your systems or returning checks. One is actively through the use of agents such as NRPE, even active SNMP checking, which is agentless itself. And then you've got passive checks, so SNMP traps, stuff of that nature. We've got a few clients, a few systems or protocols rather, such as NRDS, that you can install on your Linux and Windows systems, and that will also passively send results up to you on sort of a cron basis. And the plain text status information is paired with the exit code. So what I mean by that, I kind of explained that a little strange there now that I'm actually vocally saying it. Nagios uses plugins for all of its checking, the majority of its checking. Of course, if you're checking against WMI, that's straight Windows interface stuff. That's not plugin based. But if you crack open any of the Nagios plugins that you'll find on our Exchange website, where you can download custom plugins, you'll notice that there are exit codes all over the place. And those are for what the plugin is checking against. So for instance, if you're checking hard drive space, and you're passing in a warning and a critical threshold because you want to be warned or get a critical alert if it exceeds those thresholds that you have set. Based off of the exit code that the plugin exits with after it runs, you'll get that status change in Nagios itself. So for instance, if you get a 2 exit code, that stands for critical within Nagios, a 1 warning, etc. So here I've got sort of a diagram. I'm not sure how clear it is to you in the back, but I'll do the best that I can here. I wish I had some stick I could point as well. I just basically want to show how Nagios is working here. So in the center here we've got Nagios itself, the Nagios process. You've got local plugins to the Nagios server itself, and you're also processing your performance data. Now on the left side here are objects such as our hosts and services. It could be switches, routers, printers, Windows servers, databases, anything like that we're actually checking against. So at the top here we've got active checks, and they go over a TCP or UDP connection to the system itself. And then we also have either active or passive SNMP checks coming down here. And then it looks like down below here we've got actual passive checks. So we're just kind of showing here the flow of data. So Nagios runs the checks out, and they're returned back to Nagios, or they're returned up from a passive check, such as SNMP traps. And Nagios processes that data, and if your checks or your plugins that you're running do return performance data to Nagios, that's going to be processed down below down here into an RD file, and then that's going to be pushed out to your graphs in the web interface. And up here, we just kind of have a basic diagram of there's the browser, which is our web interface, and then we've got our alerting methods, so just mail and SMS/pager in this example here. Of course, there are many different ways you can handle alerting. You can push, like I was saying, RSS feeds. You can use just your standard, say, Verizon or any of your phone carriers, and you can just alert through SMS that way. We have integration within Nagios XI that allows you to use an out-of-band SMS system. So if you have one set up in your office and you don't want to transfer over your local lines to your phones, you can use your out-of-band system to push notifications securely to your devices that way. And here, I'm just going to go into a few different configuration examples. So, Nagios XI, Nagios Core. Nagios XI uses a MySQL database, and the configuration changes are read out of and push in that way to the system, and I'll go over that here. I just wanted to preface that. Because these files here are located, local to the Nagios server. This would be, for instance, a host definition here. So this is what Nagios reads and determines how your host really connects into your system, what services reside under it, what checks it's running, etc. So we start up here at the top. We have our host name. So in the web interface, it would show up as a Linux server, and then the alias. Well, the alias is what would be shown, which would be, for instance, in this case, Sam's Linux server. And then we've got our host name. And this is just the beginning, basics of object definitions, such as hosts and services. We've got the address that this host resides on, so that's the IP address of the Linux server. We have parents to that host, and what parents allow us to do is if we define, for instance, a switch or a firewall that's between Nagios and the system itself, this host will go into an unknown state if that firewall goes into a critical state. So what we're saying there is basically we don't know if this host is just unreachable or if it's actually critical. If the check is returning that we need to go out there and try to fix something. Because if it was in an OK state and then that switch went down, it could still be in an OK state. But we want to know, of course, we can't reach it right now. So we'll go to an unknown state then instead of a critical. Then we have our check command here. The check command, that definition right here, is calling that command definition out of our commands.cfg file, which is the basic commands configuration file. This check command here, for instance, the check host alive, is just a basic ping check against the host. Most host checks, generally all host checks, are ping checks just to see if it's up or down. Because this is not the real meat and potatoes of what we're monitoring with the system. That would be the services. Then we've got our check interval. This is how often Nagios is actively running this ping check to that host. We have a retry interval. So if this during this check interval, if we return a check and the state changes, say to a warning or a critical, Nagios is going to retry this check every 1 minute. This is a minute increment here. Both of our minute increments. So it's going to switch from every 5 minutes to every 1 minute 5 more times before we generate a critical alert or a warning alert, something like that. Now, if it does switch back to OK, if the host switches back or the host or server switches back to an OK state during that time, this will all reset automatically. We've got our check period. So within Nagios, there's a time periods configuration file as well. With that, we can basically say we only want to check this host or servers during these hours, during this time, etc. So this is a 24/7 check here. Our contact groups. So with Nagios Core, you notify your members or your email addresses, your mobile phone numbers, anything like that would be called a contact within Nagios. It's basically just a small configuration that says, send your alerts to these guys or send these alerts to these and these addresses. And so router admins, that could be anything from email addresses to mobile phone numbers, pushing out to RSS feeds, stuff like that. And they will be alerted once the configuration deems that an alert is going to be sent out by Nagios. So when Nagios reads this and says, I need to send a notification, it will send to the contact groups. Our notification interval. So Nagios is going to notify us every 30 minutes. So if it's in a critical state, for instance, it would be every 30 minutes, warning, etc. We have our period. So if we don't want to be notified on Fridays, if we have that set up with our period here, we will not receive notifications for this device's state. And then we have our options here. These are just shorthand terms for down, up, and recovery for a host. So we'd be notified for those different states. Anything else, we won't be notified for this host. Now I'm going to try to speed through the service here a little bit. Looks like kind of boring some of you with this. You probably have seen this before. But I'm just trying to cover the basics once again. So here we've got a service. This is the service of the host that we just showed you. So this is what the name of the host that it's connected to is, the description of the service. Sorry, this is supposed to be service name. I made a typo there. Or there's supposed to be a service name in here as well, in addition to that. But for the sake of demonstration, this is running a check command as well, not the check host alive, because this is a service. But with this one, we're running check nrpe. Now this whole string here is being passed to that command definition, because the command definition is literally verbatim what you can run by hand on the command line for Nagios to check. And I'll be showing that here on the next slide as well. So I'm going to probably flip in between these two slides. We already went over these options here, so they're going to be the same for your services as your host. And we have our command definition. So I'm going to pop back to that last slide here and show you where I'm plugging the items in, just as an example. So generally with your command definitions, at least in a default installation, you will always have user 1 at the beginning here. Now what that's saying is we're using the user 1 macro, and this is called a user macro. Within Nagios, there's a resources CFG file where you can custom define any of these user macros. I don't remember off the top of my head how many you can have. It's in the hundreds though, I believe. So for instance, user 1 here on every default install is going to say user local Nagios libexec, and that's the directory that all of our plugins are going to be located in. So we're basically saying here, user local Nagios libexec check nrpe, which is a plugin script, -h, that's passing our host address, and Nagios will dynamically pick up your host address from the host you defined in the server, or the service configuration, fill it in there. -t30, that's adding a 30-second timeout delay. So if the check is not returned within 30 seconds, it will time out and it'll give you a critical that it hasn't returned anything during that time. Then we've got our arguments at the end. Now our arguments are taken from your service definitions or host definitions, however you have them defined. In this case, we've got check nrpe. Then we've got a explanation there, which stands for, this is all the first argument. So -c check disk, so it's passing, basically it's calling check disk on the remote Linux server, which is another plugin. The second argument is this string here, which is saying we want warning if it's at 60% usage and a critical at 80% in the case of this plugin. So just briefly, that's how Nagios basically runs its checks based off its service definitions. All right, so we're going to move on to Nagios XI really from now. I'm going to pop back here, and yes, this is kind of grimy, this shot I've got here. This is basically what, I'm sure most of you have used Nagios Core. This is basically what Nagios Core looks like on the front end. We've got just our basic menu on the left-hand side here. This is where you're going to control all of the web front end of Nagios Core. And you'll notice with Nagios XI, we still have these options, but they're in different places, and I'll be showing that here shortly. So with Nagios XI, much like Core, you can install on any CentOS RHEL system. We recommend 5.7 or more recent versions. You can also use a vSphere OVF format for those installations, Microsoft VMs and VMware VMs. You can also install it by source if you've got a bare metal server that you already have provisioned out for your monitoring solution. You can install Nagios XI by source that way as well. And we have the same basic system requirements down below there. So Nagios XI, like I said earlier, uses Core as its backend. The logic and the processing really remain the same between the two. There's no change in how it handles your checking, your alerting, event handling, stuff such as that. And like I was saying, it has really backwards integration with Nagios Core config files. So with Nagios XI, you're no longer creating configuration files by hand. You can, but the primary way it's done is either through wizards, it's a really easy step-by-step process to get you through the configuration creation, or by hand within the Core Configuration Manager, which is another section in Nagios XI. So it's not manually typing the entire thing out. You've got different pages, you've got radio dials, text fields, drop-down menus, just easy ways to set up your hosts and services in the Core Configuration Manager as well. So what you can do, though, is you can still import your Nagios Core flat configuration files from your old installs, or if you want to test Nagios XI, you can pull in all of your core information from one of your systems and then push it up into Nagios XI. It's quite an easy, slick process. What you can also do is you can use flat configuration files themselves for your hosts and services you're monitoring within Nagios XI. So if you didn't want to use the database for whatever reason, you could skip all that and just use static configurations. And it looks like I covered just about all of that. Do you guys have any questions at this point in time? Otherwise, we'll just keep on rolling. Alrighty. So like I was mentioning, the front end is going to be quite different for Nagios XI. I'm going to show you a video here, and I'm going to kind of talk. I'm going to pause it as I move through it and talk over what's going on. And it's virtually manageable from the web interface. Whereas with Nagios Core, like I was saying, you have to go in and manually run command line. I mean, you have to verify your configuration files. You can restart all of your services from the command line. That's no longer the case with Nagios XI. You can do that all on the web front end itself. So you don't have to really, if you don't have members on your team that are gurus with the command line, that's totally fine. You can control everything that's really mission critical in Nagios XI from the front end. So efficiency. Like I was mentioning earlier, it's quite a bit easier to use than Nagios Core, I would argue. So you'll really have a faster overall reaction to items. Now, there are some really crazy Nagios Core setups out there that I've seen where it's really close to Nagios XI in the way that it's handled, but they are pretty few and far between. You have some additional features with Nagios XI. Just some of the big ones that stand out to me personally are dashboards, components, and the configuration wizards. So with dashboards in Nagios XI, I'll be showing this as well, so I think I'll just leave that to the video. But there are items called components that we build on our team and that others build in the community. And it's basically, let's see, for instance, I'll just use this as an example. Myself and another member of our team wrote a component a few months ago called the profile component, and that's an update to the system profile page in Nagios XI, which shows you just your basic system statistics of your local server. The new update allows you to click a download button, and it will grab the top 100 lines of a few of the major log files. It'll also grab your configurations and wrap them up. So a lot of times, I mean, if there's problems that we can't solve quite quickly, we'll ask you for your configuration files just so we can take a look and see where problems may be lying. And this will just package things up. And that's something you can build new components. So you can harness the backend APIs that way, build components to pull things in, and really kind of make XI your own, per se. All right. So I'm going to show you the demo video now. I also wanted to point out we do have a live demo that's up right now. I didn't really want a chance using this myself because live demos and presentations break all the time. So I'm going to move over to the video here. Alrighty. So when you first install Nagios XI, that looks all right. It's a little hard to read, but when you first install Nagios XI and you're going to your web front end for the first time, this is the page you'll be greeted with. This is your login page. Over the past, I'd say about a year or so, you've been working on a lot of internationalization, and we're constantly adding more languages. We've got people across the world that are working with us in their home countries and trying to bring in language, kind of overhaul the interface in their own language, which is really neat. So as soon as we log in here, all right, so once we log into the interface, unless you disable it, there's going to be a standard pop-up here. This basically tells you if you've got current host and service problems, where they lie. If you click on these icons or these links here, they will take you to a page with a whole drop-down of all of your current problems. In addition to that, you'll also be notified of updates to Nagios XI here. And once we get out of this page here, now we're looking at our complete homepage itself. So immediately, there's a big glaring difference here between Nagios Core and XI. We have a full blue main menu bar at the top here. This is where some of the newer features with Nagios XI are filled in. So this is where you can access specific overhead pages. And then your submenus are along the side here. So this home page menu here looks quite similar to what you get with Nagios Core. You still have your host details and your service details where you can see the list of all of your items that you've added. We've got our host group summaries, service group summaries, performance graphing, selections here, some incident management stuff such as it gives you the ability to see your latest alerts and notifications, who on your team acknowledged problems, if someone acknowledged a server that was critical, and this could have been on accident, but that suppresses Nagios from sending you alerts. If that caused a major problem, you'd probably want to know who did that, just so they don't do it again. So you can kind of get that audit information down below here as well. And then we've got our homepage dashboard, which is what you're seeing here. What you're seeing is a graph as part of our Graph Explorer component. It's kind of a slick, more modern-looking graph than what's already available with Nagios Core itself. You're also seeing a couple dashlets, which is your service and host status summary here, disk usage, and this is also a dashlet itself. And what dashlets are is they're small bits of aggregated information from your interface that you can place on dashboards. Now, the homepage dashboard here displays on our homepage automatically. And then we can add certain things here that we may want to see all the time when we return to this page. We might want to see our host status summary. We might want to see the top systems that have this disk usage check on them, how they stack up against each other. If you're monitoring environments where you do a lot of file system monitoring, that may be something useful to you. But for many of the pages within Nagios XI, you do have these dashlets. And there's a little icon. Let's see if I can skip ahead here. I'll show you a little more on them here as we get to the dashboard section. I'm going to skip through this as well. This is our main account information page. This is accessed either through the admin menu or from your logged in account at the top here. You can link. This is logged in as a Nagios admin, which is the main overall admin account for Nagios. We can just change our basic password information in here, email address, stuff such as that. Now, what we're doing here is we're showing how you can change notification preferences for your users. If you're being alerted through users as opposed to contacts, because that's something you can do with Nagios XI as well, you would change those settings in here. You can enable or disable notifications as a whole for this user in the entire interface. You can choose what types of notifications you receive here, as well as change your time period for notifications. Say you've got a gentleman that works in your data center Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you don't want him to receive notifications, nor does he during the normal week. You could block that out down here. I'm going to try to skip ahead here. We've got about, what's it, 10 minutes? Oh, geez. You see what I mean? You cannot cover everything in this time period. So let me skip here, and I'll be available between the break, too. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I will skip back to our configuration menu here. And I'll try to find some way to make this video available to you online as well. This is basically what we cover in our webinars, which Seamus and I will be doing a live webinar tomorrow. I'm not sure what block, because we had to fill in for somebody that couldn't make it, but we're going to go through an hour live webinar as well, and that may be something you want to show up for, because I'm skipping some items here that will be shown there. Okay, so let me hop back here. All right, so we're in the configuration menu right now. The configuration menu basically gives us access to our core configuration manager, where you can go in and change your hosts and services, any of your objects, contacts, anything like that, even after you've created them. And then we've got our configuration wizards here. So it's just scrolling down one of our lists with some of the configuration wizards that we already have built into Nagios XI. Now, these just make it a breeze to set up monitoring. In most cases, for some of the top items you might be monitoring, anything from MySQL databases to Postgres. We're working on a MongoDB wizard right now. We've got some of our Windows checks or Windows ones down here. So this is going to be the Windows Server Monitoring wizard here that we're walking through. So as you saw in that flat configuration file, we had to have an IP address for our host, right? Now, in the wizard, we're just filling that in right here. Step 2 is where we're going to, this wizard, for instance, does require us to have an agent installed on the Windows server. That's by no means a requirement for a Nagios, any Nagios product. We do have fully featured passive checking as well that's available. This is just an example I'm giving here. So once we have that agent installed, there's going to be a list of some of the top metrics we may want to monitor on our Windows server here, such as a ping check. We're going to check CPU here, memory usage, how long the server's been up. We've got disk usage here, so the standard A through Z Windows drive lettering. Services that are running on the server, we can check if they're up or down. Same with processes. Of course, we might want to monitor Explorer EXE if anyone wants to use the system. Be good to have that running. And then we've got spots for Windows performance counters as well. If any of you are Windows admins, you know there's thousands of variations for performance counters, and that really allows you to get some granular checking in there. And that's the whole section with setting up your actual services. So each one of those items that we checked in those boxes there, CPU usage, memory, all of that, that was a separate service that Nagios is now going to be creating automatically for us. Then we're just going to go through our basic final steps here, things that are required by Nagios to use your configuration files, such as how often you're checking the host, how you'll be notified, items like that. We're skipping here to the last step. All right, now once you finish the last step in any of our wizards, Nagios is going to do what's called applying configuration. So it's taking those configuration files that we just created in the back, it's running a verification against them, then it's going to push them up to the MySQL database where everything resides. So when you enter the CCM, everything you see listed there is pulled from the database tables. And it's just basically making sure that you can actually monitor the devices or the items that you added. If there are any problems, you will not get those 3 green check marks there. And it will bail out and say there's been an issue. In that case, you can do manual configuration verification from within Nagios XI itself. That will be located under our tools menu here. We can run a configuration file check basically that tells us where those problems are, what lines they're on, and where we need to fix problems so that we can get monitoring on those devices. Okay, and I'm probably going to wrap the video up there. Does anybody have any questions right now? We get a microphone for a couple people. Thank you.
Can I run the wizard on a group of servers, not just one?
What was that?
Can I run the wizard on a group of servers?
What you can do in that case is you can either add the, let me go back here a couple of steps. If you create, well, there's a few ways you can do that. So you can create host groups, or you can run the wizard just once, and then you can create separate hosts. Because remember, the way that we're checking against different servers and the way we're getting the IP address is from the host itself. So we can just create multiple hosts, or we can clone the settings that we've done with this wizard onto a new host. And that way you can set up, for instance, if you've got 20 switches you want to monitor, and they all have the same ports, and you're checking the same thresholds, you can basically clone those services onto new hosts. So you don't have to go through the whole process again. Nagios, there's a few ways that make it quite easy for you to do that within the interface itself. So.
Okay, and one more thing. once I'm using the configuration manager, can I still edit the files manually?
Yes. So do you mean by hand on the command line?
Yeah.
What you would have to do in that case is, yes, the configuration files that you're changing here, even though you're making these changes to the database, the configuration files are still, you can still find them in the same spot that you would with, for instance, Nagios Core. They're in the same directories. So you could take those and you can make changes to those, and then you could place those in a static directory within Nagios XI, and we have documentation on how to do this. And then you could use those static configuration files instead of the database. So you can go in and you can manually change, like for instance, some people do have elaborate Nagios Core configuration setups where they have automated the process of editing certain things. And you might not want to let go of that if you spend a lot of time working with that. And you can still do the same monitoring with static files, yes.
Thank you.
When you are configuring a new server to monitor, you're applying the same notification for all the services. Can you guys start breaking it down so I have a different level of notifications?
So for instance, if you were getting a notification sent to one user or one contact and there were still problems with the server, can you escalate that? Is that kind of what you're asking?
No, really. You're using a block of all the services that you want to monitor, right?
Yep.
And then you're applying the same level of notifications to all that block.
Correct.
Can you start splitting it up so it's a different level for each service?
Yeah, I think I'm understanding. What you can do, yeah, is you can go in and so that's all taken care of on one step in the configuration wizard itself. You can go into the core configuration manager here, and you can make those changes there as well. So if you can see the mouse, we've got our alert settings here. That's going to hold all of our, and I might actually be able to skip to that point here. That's going to hold all of our notification and alerting options for that device. So yes, we can do a kind of a multi-tiered system by changing those options there. Let's see if I actually skip to it here. You know what? I had said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to show our online demo here, just because I can't find myself on the video. So it's a possibility that it might drop because our demos do reset on the ARC because people can come in there and change configurations. We just have a global configuration it resets to. So let's go to configure here. Now I'm going to go over to our core configuration manager. I'm going to log into the database here with our core configuration manager user. Generally, this password is different than the normal Nagios admin password. What I believe it is for our demo server is just welcome. All right. So on the left side here, we've got our different, I guess you could say, tables within a database. So we've got our hosts, services, our contacts down below here, escalations for notifications. So you can say, if this problem isn't resolved on the first notification, send it to another group of people, and you can escalate it up the chain that way. So let's go into services here. And we're just going to open one of our basic localhost checks here with Nagios XI. And we'll scroll over. Now, I do want to pause here just for a moment. I think we're out of time, aren't we? Oh, we do have time. All right. And I just want to make mention, you saw the regular old style configuration file earlier. You're going to see the same information here. You see your the name for the configuration file here, our description. Here's our check command that we had defined, our arguments, and how they're being passed into that check. Because within Nagios XI, you can see the actual check command here without having to go out to the actual configuration file itself and see that. And then you can also run tests to your host or your services as you set them up. So maybe you needed to tweak some of your notification options, or excuse me, not notification options, but some of your arguments for this check load. You can run a test, it's a test check against that host and that service and see what you need to change there. So it's quite useful. Now here's where our alert settings are. This is where I would manage my contacts, so I can add any of my contacts that I've got within Nagios XI. I'll just say we want to add that. And the resolution on this projector is quite low, so I can't move around without scrolling. We would set up our notification period here. And as you can see, this is quite fluid compared to having to go in and manually change stuff on the command line. We'll just enable notifications. We want warning and critical notifications, and then we also want and then we would set our notification intervals here. And so hopefully that kind of shows you what I was talking about there a little easier. Do we have any other questions? Oh, excellent.
You mentioned earlier on that Nagios can push out data to RSS feeds or other types of applications. Could you give an example of that?
Yeah, so let me, it might not be available on, excuse me, not reports, which is something I didn't have time to talk about either, unfortunately. Let's go. Go to this server here. And I'm just going to scroll over. Go back up here to our notification options for this user. And methods. So for instance, on this server here, we have got RSS set up in here. This is something that's you can download from our Exchange website and integrate with Nagios XI. So along the lines of components like I was talking about. So in this example here, we're just going to be using RSS for notifications. So we'd be pushing our state changes, basically what we're getting with our email notifications or SMS notifications. We're pushing that out to RSS feeds. Now, we can change the format in which we receive our notifications right here through our messages page. So we do have an RSS tab here. Now what you're seeing here is, you see these words surrounded by % signs. These are macros, so notification macros in Nagios XI. They're all dynamically filled out by XI based on what it's alerting on or sending information on. You can remove these. You can add custom macros yourself. We have a list of macros that are already built into Nagios XI. You can move them around, anything like that you can do here. And this is basically how we receive that notification through the RSS feed itself, based on either a host notification alert or service. So were you looking for maybe a more specific example of?
Well, I'm actually interested in pumping the data to a MySQL database. Your database stores the configuration information, but I'd like to store more information than just the configuration. I'd actually like to store information about the devices themselves.
Okay, so more along the lines of, say, like serial keys, stuff like that? Or is it still theoretical, sort of? Okay, well, no problem. That's it, depending on how you want to do it. You can also, I mean, I would recommend getting in contact with us. Do you use Nagios XI currently? Okay. Well, we do have a fully featured 60-day trial that's totally free. So if you do get a chance in the future to work on that, you can come to talk to myself on the support forum or talk to our sales team, and they'll send me questions from you, and I can help you figure out a way to do that, which is also nice. I mean, we're kind of a smallish company, so we're still quite personable. We like to help people out. A lot of people I know on a first name basis that I work with that use Nagios, which is really neat. So.
It's okay. We can start a couple minutes late.
Okay, I actually have like a few things. First thing, if you can go back to the home screen, I see you've changed your dashlets up a little bit.
Yep.
First question is, how do you do that?
Okay, so, and that's one thing I had to skip across on the video too. So we've got our dashboard. This is our home dashboard he's talking about. Now we're going to go up to our dashboards page here. And I'm sorry that the resolution kind of cuts half of the screen off from my workstation. What what we're doing here is we've got a list of our dashboards, and to add new one, we'd simply click Add New Dashboard. But we're talking about our home page here. So as you see, I mouse over this dashlet here as an example. We get this kind of iframe around it. Now, when you find dashlets throughout the interface, or when you go to manage dashlets and you add it to one of your dashboards, such as your home page dashboard, they will populate on that dashboard itself. Now you can unpin these and move them around. You can resize them. Basically do what you want with them. You can delete them if you don't want them on there. But that's how you would change that. So I kind of just threw some examples on there for now. But
And are those global, or are those just on a per user basis?
yeah, well, what you can do.
Here's the question I ask. We have 24/7 NOC, and they're constantly monitoring things.
Yep.
And currently, the typical setup is only host monitors and service monitors, and it's kind of bare bones. And where I was segueing to that was, can we add in columns on the service dashlet
to these
for
dashlets?
like comments? Because they send out notification. They make calls to whoever's on call.
Right.
So they have to drill down into the service to find out if there's a comment on it who they need to call. So where I was going with it, can you customize that, A, by what's on there, and B, can you customize the dashlets to like add a column to the service monitors?
That's something that we are looking at implementing right now. We have talked about that as a future feature that we'd like to add in, is some way within the interface where you can modify dashlets and components we already have in there, rather than, you can do it. Yes, you can definitely do it. They're primarily PHP files, and they're quite well commented. All the XI code and core code is quite well commented. So you can definitely do that. I was just talking about more of a feature that we're looking at in the future where you'll be able to do that. As far as drilling down to the comments, I mean, for instance, what you could do here is click on one of our, we've got 12 services in a warning state right now. So we're clicking on this, and then it's going to give us our whole list here of the services in a warning state. And we go into this one here, and then I can acknowledge the problem. So that's one way your team could drill down through the dashboard or dashlets.
Yeah, I just think they don't want to click 3 times. I don't know
Yeah.
what the problem is, but I mean, if you go into the advanced, then you have the comments on the bottom where.
Yep.
The question is, can that data be presented to the home dashboard as a column, so they wouldn't have to click 3 more buttons?
You could certainly do it. Not currently. There's no way to pull that in that's already available and already created. You can pull that information, though. You would be able to do that to a dashlet, yes. So, you could probably send me an email, and then I could kind of outline what you need to do, or a way to get you on the road with that. If that's something you're interested in trying out yourself or taking a look at.
Okay, thanks. And then I'll just ask one more thing. Companies that already have a incident management solution in place, can you integrate this in with your current solution? Or do you have to use an incident management system that is?
It depends on that solution. So
we use CRM.
I believe there is integration for CRM. It's not anything standard that we quote unquote support, but we will help you integrate it. There should be, I would Google it right now, but there are, in addition to our support form where we help people do that, I believe I did see it listed someplace else. There's some site out there that people asked if they could integrate with. I think it's Remedy is another one, and there's integration there too. So they've got kind of a list of what they've done so far. But
All right, we're a little over. Let us go a little over because we have a break coming up. If you need to go out right now, next session's at 4:30. Do we have any last questions? Good. We're breaking until 4:30. Nice round of applause for Sam Lansing for hanging in there.